It's Gerald Amster. He's one of the few Americans who have served a prison sentence in the Soviet Union. He was arrested in Moscow on charges of smuggling heroin. He spent 4.5 years in Soviet jails. Were you guilty of the smuggling charge, Mr. Amster?
Yes, I was, Mr. Brokaw.
Yeah. Why did you attempt to smuggle heroin through Moscow, of all places?
Well, at that time, it was known that Moscow had been a transit point for persons who were smuggling drugs from Southeast Asia, and as people would travel through Moscow and enter customs in a Western country, generally their baggage wouldn't be checked because, as a rule, transit passengers aren't checked anywhere.
But you were checked and found guilty?
Yes.
Tell us about the conditions in Soviet jails.
Well, the first 4 months I had been at Lefortovo, which is the KGB prison in Moscow. The investigation took place there, lasted 2 months, and the trial then took place and lasted 4 days, and we stayed there. There were 3 of us. One is still under imprisonment there. We stayed there a total of 4 months in this prison, and were sent to a strict regime labor colony in Mordovia, which is an autonomous republic in the Russian Federation.
Physical abuse?
There was no physical abuse at all.
What were the conditions like generally?
Well, of course, having come from a Western country, from the United States, in fact, they were quite different and quite unexpected. It was very difficult to adjust in the beginning because we had no previous experiences of the type. The food was the main problem because Soviet prisoners receive a very, very bland, you might say a very very unpleasant diet in terms of taste. The nutritional factors are such that they are supposed to be come up to international standards, and they do in caloric content. However, vitamins are always a deficit in the diet.
Did you have any sympathy among the Soviet inmates who were there?
Yeah, there was a lot of sympathy from Soviet inmates, of course.
Why were they in jail primarily?
Well, they were in prison for a multitude of crimes, from crimes of violence to that of crimes of commercial speculation. And there were some that were dissidents to the Soviet regime.
Were they singled out, the political dissidents, for any special harsh treatment?
No, they have, the dissidents are generally kept in separate camps, but on occasion, in my experiences, I had also been in Russian camps, and I had met some, and their conditions you might even say, might be somewhat better than that of persons convicted of crimes of violence.
How did this experience change your life, Mr. Amster?
Oh, entirely. It's given me a completely new outlook on life, and has made me really think or delve into the past very, very strongly.
Safe to say you're no longer smuggling?
That's for sure.
What are you doing now?
Right now, I've just returned. I returned on December the 3rd. I'm not quite sure. I've had offers to tell my experiences in a literary sense. I don't know what I will be doing, quite honestly. But of course, it'll be something along that line. While I was in the Soviet Union, I learned to speak Russian fluently, and perhaps I could make some use of this in the future, too, as some sort of an interpreter or translator.
Any interest in going back to Russia?
Not at the present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amster, for being with us this morning. An extraordinary tale of life in a Soviet prison camp by an American. Here is Cliff Morrison now with the latest weather for us.
A 33-year-old Queens man completed a long journey home today after serving a 7-year sentence in a Siberian labor camp. Dennis Byrne was greeted by his sister at Kennedy Airport after leaving the Soviet Union Thursday. His trip home was interrupted in 1976 when he was arrested in Moscow. Byrne and 2 other Americans pleaded guilty to carrying nearly 63 pounds of heroin in their suitcases, and they were given a so-called lenient sentence of 7 years. Byrne said nothing to reporters upon his arrival.
Byrne and 2 other Americans had pleaded guilty at a Moscow trial in 1976 to smuggling nearly 63 pounds of heroin in their suitcases. The trio had traveled from Malaysia, but they were headed to Paris. They got caught in a stopover in Moscow late this afternoon. Byrne arrived at Kennedy Airport, where he briefly described his imprisonment.
You left them? It's a concentration camp. Really?
Byrne's 2 accomplices had served shorter terms in the Soviet prison camp.